welcome to today's show. It's a little bit late. You may have noticed that. I certainly did. It wasn't intended to be late, let me tell you. It was a series of catastrophic events which led to... Well, let's just say that as I was getting ready to do the show, I may or may not have knocked something over which spilled a large amount of liquid all over the place. And some of it may have gone near the computer, so there was a lot of panic going on in this afternoon's setup. But hopefully that will, well, it's been so hot it will dry. Anyway, it's a lesson learned, so I switched from the delicate glass. I've now got a big, more robust thing. It says push the limits, although I don't know what that means. Anyway, I found it in the cupboard here in the house, so... I don't know what's that. Anyway, it's just water now because, well, everything else is gone. It's just gone. It's gone. Anyway, hello and welcome to today's show. I think it's going to be a very quiet show because I think everyone's sort of moved on already since it is, almost 45 minutes late. I did debate at some point. I thought, well, is there any point in actually coming and doing it now? Because I'm sure everyone's moved on. So certainly if gone blank now. Certainly, if you have other things to do, don't feel obliged to hang around. We're going to answer some of your questions today. We're going to go through some of the basics, and that's it. So this is the new time frame. I know a lot of people couldn't make it now as well because people have got games on, which is absolutely important to play. I played in a great game on Wednesday, the one-on-one, and then I had a wonderful experience last night. We were playing through the Torg Eternity game that I had set up, and what an interesting situation. I must admit, going into it, I was very nervous because I thought the cards were going to be so disruptive and the meta was going to be so big that there wasn't going to be any actual role-playing going on. But once again, my wonderful players proved to me that it doesn't matter what the system is. If there is a story, if they have their characters, they will make it happen, regardless of the complexity of the system or not. So that will be coming out on Tuesday on the main channel, so watch out for that. That will wrap out our complete playthrough of the Torg Eternity system. Thereafter, we start on the next one, which is the Dark Eye. I'm nervous going into that one. I've been warned by a lot of the German viewers. It's like, this is a very important document for our people. Do not screw it up, Sklanders. We're watching you. Yeah, I get that feeling. Anyway, so that's going to be an interesting one to go through, and that will start on the channel as soon as we are finished with Torg. So there we are. If you do have a question, please do as Nicholas Morrow has done, and that is to put the word question in front of your question, so that it pops out and I can see it. White Tiger 225 says, I wanted to do bosses with multiple points of attack. Yeah, heads, legs, etc., in 5th edition. What are some good ways to stop the players from just going for the head and being done? Well, way back when, and Torg actually still includes this, because in the early RPGs that were out there, you could do call shots to the head. So what you do, and this is what I suggested that gets done in Nautical Campaigns, as a matter of fact, there's a section there on making truly titanic creatures. So forget Gargantuan. Gargantuan is actually not that big. Gargantuan is anything that's bigger than 20 foot by 20 foot. And you go, well, that's cute, but I got something that's bigger. So each section has a different armor class. Go for the head. Sure, it has an armor class of 24. Good luck hitting it. And if you do hit it, yes, you do damage. You do more damage than if you were hitting the leg or the limb or the tail or the torso. But its armor class is way higher. So they can certainly just focus on the head. No problems whatsoever. But that does put them in the direct line of fire of the animal's primary attacks. So that's how I would balance it out. Nicholas Morrow says, will you ever play Mutants and Masterminds again? I very much doubt it. And I'll tell you why. When we did play Mutants and Masterminds long time ago, a long time ago, the system didn't impress upon me a uniqueness that was specific to creating superheroes. I feel that there are other systems out there that are not as necessarily intrusive or as prescriptive as Mutants and Masterminds was. Maybe I had a bad experience with it, and if someone said, hey, come and play in a game of Mutants and Masterminds, I certainly wouldn't say no. I don't think I would run it, though. I'd rather do something... I don't know. I would look for a system that allows for a little bit more... I don't know how to put it. Mutants and Masterminds, it just didn't feel like a flowy system to me. Maybe I'm wrong, but there you are. It could also be familiarity. That's the other thing. That's certainly what doing Torg has done for me. It's definitely shown me that it doesn't matter what the system is that you're playing. It's the story. So, but there we go. All right. So, Dekrishka says, how to make a villain challenging in a fight, since I want the players to get the satisfaction to fight him if they are just an alchemist creating monsters. The alchemist is all about, as you say, creating monsters, but also building and doing things and probably testing on themselves. So a simple solution is that he takes his own chemicals. He takes his own chemicals and transforms into this particularly vicious, monstrous creature type of thing, which I think will make him stronger. Or he takes chemicals and he transforms into multiple copies of himself. However you do it, I would still link it to the fact that perhaps he's created multiple clones of himself. And each one is imbibed with a different alchemical property. Or there's a suggestion from White Tiger 225 to fuse him with one of his alchemical creations. Or perhaps he just becomes a chemical. He literally transforms into this wonder sludge type stuff. Becomes his own gelatinous cube, if you will. So there's some interesting ones. Denkano asks, is it okay to have the GM controlled PC as long as the PC acts as support and out of sight? What you're talking about, Denkano, is what we call a GMPC or a DMPC, the Game Master Player Character. The idea that the Game Master would have a player character is not new. It's a very old idea. I've had GMs who've done it many years ago in the 90s. Why do they make a GMPC? Why is it not just an NPC who is kept special? And the reason for that was that by having the title of GMPC, that GMPC was a no-touch. The other player characters had to treat that person as a character that they could interact with, but they couldn't just abandon or slaughter or sacrifice. Whereas with NPCs, they generally can. I'm personally against it, because if you as the GM have this character that's inserted there that is a no-touch, that to me really does become a slight opportunity for railroading. Now, yes, if they are just providing the support, and when the party says, which way should we go? The character needs to be able to answer in a way that is satisfactory. Now, if you're going to just rely on die rolls to do that, I don't know. To me, it feels like there's suddenly this weird meta dice that are allowing to be involved, and I don't know. I prefer to have them as NPCs. That way, if the PCs want to scrap them, if they don't see value, if they just want to get rid of them, then that's exactly what they can do, and exactly what should happen as well. So I definitely would do it that way. So that's where we are there. Dekrishka says, you could ask Myri for help with the Dark Eye. It was Myri who threatened me with death if I touched her sacred system and screwed it up. So there we go. Ben Nicholson says, what period is your Star Wars game in that you recently put up? Damn it! I knew there was something I forgot to do. Yesterday was a very busy day. And I forgot to do that one important thing. Give me just 2 seconds. Idiots. I need to just adjust the details here. The game is set 500 years before the events of the Phantom Menace, during the age of the Golden Republic. There we go. I just needed to put that in. I knew I forgot it. I forgot to do it when we were doing the intro, and then I posted up the videos and forgot to drop it in there. So thank you for raising that little point. I will drop that into all of them so that people can remember what is happening. This was so much fun to run. This really was a lot of fun to run. I think that, you know, one of the critical things that we did was we said, well, this is just us playing. This is not anything that is fancy. We didn't put on anything special. It was just us playing, and it was such a pleasure to run. It really was. We said we were going to do 4. We thought we might end up doing more, but as it was, we ended up only doing 4 episodes, which was absolutely fine as well, I think. I mean, yeah, I'm not going to give you spoilers. I'm not going to give you any spoilers at all. I'm just doing this because if I don't do it now, I'm going to forget it. I am going to forget it. All right. So there you are. Right. Let's see. Paul asks, not to get meta, but where is the boundary between player knowledge and character knowledge? There isn't one. There really isn't one. The best I have ever come across in terms of solving that line is if you know of it, if you as the player know of it, and it's something that's unique or rare or might be considered knowledge in your own opinion that is either anachronistic or is something that gives you power in the game that your character wouldn't have. That is when I go, no, I stop that. But if you are someone who is creative and clever and sharp, or glib, as they might say, you come up with lots of ideas quickly, should your character be able to do the same thing? Well, what I usually do there is if I'm purposefully playing a character, or if I'm playing a character who has a low intellect or a low intelligence or whatever system you're using, if I'm playing someone who has a low value in that space, in the mental faculty space, I will go, I think that's a good idea. Let me roll a die. Oh, I didn't pass the check. Okay, my character doesn't have that idea. So I do that sometimes, but it's up to you to decide that. It really is up to you to decide that. But again, if it's knowledge that you have as the player that your character shouldn't have, like troll regeneration as a classic example, or Hydra heads regeneration, that is something that you know because of the world that you live in today, not if you were a character living in a fantasy world. Not necessarily. Now, you will get people who argue and go, oh, but if you live in a fantasy world where there are hydras, you definitely will know how to kill hydras. You live in a world today where you have lions and elephants and hippopotami and buffalo. Do any of you know how to kill those? I do, because I spent a year as a wildlife cameraman out in the middle of those creatures. So it was a pretty vital skill. But that's 1 in a million people. So I think that's the best way to do it. That is the best way to do it. Nicholas Morris says, have you ever heard of Frostpunk? Oh my God. Why, Nicholas, do you bring up these absolutely awful memories? The amount of children I had to execute because they would not go out into the freezing cold to die whilst digging coal with their bare little hands. I cannot tell you. Frostpunk is one of the most emotionally disturbing games I've ever had to play because of the way that it works. For those of you that don't know, Frostpunk is a computer game where the world is frozen over and you have a merry little band of people who are trying to keep this temperature generating furnace going. And it gets worse and worse and worse. People start dying, freezing to death. You start running out of coal or food or I don't know what. So there's at one point then where there's a rebellious political party that starts to do things. And you as the governor, you can get voted out. And do you know what happens when you get voted out of office? No, you don't become the secretary. You don't become an honorary coal miner. No, you get sent out into the ice to freeze to death. That is how the game ends if you fail. I have failed many times, and as a result, having foreseen 14 million futures, I know how to break that game. And that is by simply ignoring any morals that you might have. So there you go. It's a very grim game. Highly recommended. It's really good in terms of a sort of a worker placement survival sim. It's very, very good. How would you begin to craft a fantasy setting around that subgenre? So, Nicholas, I think the biggest problem with that is, in terms of the setting, it's very much like Avernus, D&D setting. It's so bleak, and it is so desperate all the time that after a while, I think it becomes too much. So with that world, you would have to have pockets where it's good, where it's warm. There's a warm ocean current coming from an underwater volcano, so that keeps the land 2 degrees warmer than the surrounding land. So I think you would have to do that. So if you've watched the TV series Snowpiercer, they've done exactly that. Well, they kind of hinted at it, and then I'm not going to give you spoilers, but if you watch the series on Netflix, you'll see that they needed to expand the world because the same world over and over and over again becomes very monotonous from a playing perspective. So if I was doing it as a fantasy setting, I would make sure that whatever you do, that there are more things out there than first meets the eye. There's a new game, actually, which is... Oh, God, it's just gone over my head. It's a first-person shooter... No, it's not. It's an RTS game. Iron something. Anyway, it's set in a sort of a World War One-ish style RTS with giant mechs wandering. Iron Harvest. Thank you, Lemuria. Iron Harvest. It's due for release. I think it's in November. That looks like a nice setting. It's kind of like the setting from the board game Scythe, which looks very exciting. Okay. Jose Ramirez says, I'm wrapping up the current campaign. The boss fight is the players against the tyrant fighter of one of the PCs. How do I make it epic? There are so many things, so many ways you can make it epic. I would go to the YouTube channel, Great GM, and there is a way, I think it's the 5 C's of concluding your adventure, concluding your campaign. Otherwise, if you've got the epic guide to creating, if you've got the complete guide to creating epic campaigns, there's an entire chapter on how to create epic conclusions using the 5 C's. So bear that in mind. Daniel Lewis says, I want to be a great GM, but I can't get banana milk where I live. What can I do? You're going to have to just be a player, I'm afraid. You're just going to have to be a player. If you can't get good banana milk, sorry. That's it. Game over, man. Game over. Right. Okay. So if you are new joining the channel or tonight's show, please put the word question in front of your question. And then I will hopefully be able to see it. And if I don't see it, please ask it again. Don't feel worried about spamming the channel for a decent and proper question. Featherfail says, how difficult is it to evoke a feeling of the Uncanny Valley? I always hear about Uncanny Valley, and I always forget exactly what it means and that sort of thing. I think that the easiest way to evoke it is to keep everything in first person. That, for me, I think, is really where it lies. None of this my character stuff. Always I. That will certainly help. A lot of people, though, find that very, very difficult to do, very invasive. So bear that in mind. Grizzle says, my DM has had the drow be separated in basically a separate dimension. Okie dokes. Due to an incident with an intellect devourer, I am now playing one until we hopefully can get my other character back on his feet. How should I act as a character to never see the world above and not knowing about things, like wood, confirmed by the GM to be the strangest material to him? Yeah, wood I can see as a thing. There's obviously, you have mushrooms which are soft, I suppose. They're not wood-like, which certainly Makes sense. But my advice to you is I would have them revel at the whole thing, and to really enjoy the new experiences, the warmth of sunlight. When clouds happen, what's this strange thing that clouds are doing in the sky? Because there's no clouds in the Underdark either. So there's that. There's the good old-fashioned, where's the ceiling? And am I going to fall upwards into the sky because there's no ceiling? Make sure, though, that what you do is it's wonderment and awe, not panic and terror, which debilitates the character. If you're debilitating the character, it's an irritating character for the rest of the group, and it's cute the first 2 times, but after a while it's like, nah, enough. So that is what I would suggest you do. Dragon says, watching the Star Wars episodes, they were great fun. They were great fun. They really were great fun. Counterface says, how are you able to stay cool in this heat wave? I'm not. Currently, the temperature in this room is starting to rise back up to whatever ridiculous number it was. I have an air conditioner, which I usually use, except that it's turned off for today's particular show. So that is how I do that. But yes, it has been in London, or in the UK anyway, particularly hot, upper 30s in degrees Celsius, which is temperatures that I've experienced my entire life. Unfortunately, I hate them, but yes, South Africa has them, Tokyo has them, so I suppose why shouldn't the UK have them? GM Brightside says, are you getting some grey in your beard? +3 circumstance looking distinguished. Well, thank you. I wish it was grey that did the right kind, like a shot of grey, or grey on either side, so you kind of look like a demented badger. Something that, but it's just these sort of strands of grey, and it's, yes, I wish there was either more of it or less of it, but it was more, anyway, so there we are. Warren Taylor says, do you have any advice on streaming sessions from a campaign? My players want to start streaming our sessions, and I rather like that idea. Going to have the setting be like Firefly. Tips? Well, okay, first of all, here's a hard, cold dash of reality, my friend. If you're hoping to get lots of people watching your show, if you're doing something like Firefly, Firefly is science fiction. So you're already going to get between 1/3 and 1/5 of the amount of people watching as you would if you were doing fantasy. So that's that side of it. If you're expecting to get lots of people watching, if you're doing sci-fi or anything that's not basically fantasy and predominantly Dungeons and Dragons, you are going to get less viewers. So just brace yourself for that. Be prepared. My advice to you on how to do that is to use OBS, and there are lots of web tutorials in YouTube on how to set up OBS for multi-streaming. So there you go. And the best thing to do is to just play around with OBS. There are not a lot, in my opinion, of good tutorials on how to set up our specific circumstances. This is what you do, this is where you go. Because what I have found is that OBS is a very system-specific installation. So what works for one person doesn't work for another, and so on. So just be patient with it. Get going, and PNGs with transparencies are your friend for overlay. There you go. Where are we now? Okay. Henry Kaywood says, how do you deal with starting a high-level campaign with players that have not grown the characters from level 1? Or is this a non-issue? I hate doing it. I really hate doing it, because starting a character level 10, you have the capacity to build the perfect level 10 character, which I think it may happen in real life if you are playing from level 1 to level 10. I think it may happen. I would always suggest, and I have done this, because I have had players that when I was but a young wee little GM and I only had my circle of friends to play with, we played lots of games, and eventually the players went, you know what, we've never got above level 5. Can we actually just play a level 10 character? And they made their level 10 characters, and they were so overpowered in comparison to what I was expecting, because I hadn't got used to the power shift either as the GM. So what I did was I said, all right, fine, we're going to start at level 1, and by the end of the first adventure you will be level 3. Then at the end of the next one you'll be level 5, and then you'll be level 7. So we played 4 or so adventures hyper-leveling. But what it did was it gave the characters time to evolve into themselves naturally. Maybe I was being too cautious in giving them so many sessions to get to level 10, but it seemed to work for everybody because suddenly there was a history. There was this wonderful, oh God, remember when you were doing that and you were so underpowered, and that sort of thing. So that would be my advice. Dekrishka says, in the Star Wars D20 description, there is the Bacon Battalion mentioned. Will there be a return from the first campaigns with Kalasa, Killian, Barrador, and Nalissa? The cliffhanger was mean. Well, I think that is something that I must put onto my checklist to do. I think that's, unfortunately, that is quite literally just a throwback. We haven't changed the channel in a long time, and I need to fix that. They are all still doing very well in South Africa, and Nalissa runs her own show. The name escapes me. Dames and Dragons? Is it Dames and Dragons? Anyway, she's running her own show now, which is great. But yes, it is what it is. So there we go. There we go. Featherfell says, is it a bad idea to go overboard with body horror in your descriptions? I would ask you, hey, why do you need to go overboard? And is that what your players want? So I've got a Patreon game launching tomorrow night where we did a poll, and it was, what kind of level of gore do we go to? Is it kind of Lord of the Rings level, where it's you slash his face and blood sprays into the air and that's it? Or is it the next level up, which is where one talks about teeth flying and you can see the inside of the skull and the jelly of the eye socket oozes down the face, all that kind of stuff. To be perfectly honest with you, you also shouldn't do it multiple times, because otherwise everyone's like, oh my God, this is a combat. Just kill the creature. We don't need everything to do exactly what they're doing. Please, 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 you know. Yeah, I would pick and choose as needed and make sure that your players are happy with that. Jarrett Vandenberg, thank you so very much, Jarrett. That donation is absolutely amazing. I'm blown away. Thank you. You run a small community of experienced DMs, but new game designers looking to design their own systems, rules, and adventures. Well, that's absolutely brilliant. Any advice on how to structure that community or aid new designers in their efforts? Well, I always start, when I start with a new system, when I start designing a new role-playing system and the like, the biggest challenge that you face is there is so much material that you have to think about. Because I guarantee you, when you create your first system, you say, okay, I am going to create a system that focuses primarily on social combat. It's going to be a vampire style of game where the combat, the actual physical combat, is going to be a single die roll to determine the outcome, whereas the verbal stuff is going to be multiple. You attack with a witty sentence, you counter with a pithy comment, you use sarcasm, you use etc., etc. So I want it to be more like that. And so I'm going to use 3d12 as my base. So 3 is the minimum, 36 is the maximum. Right, so that's it. Good. The very next, the mountain of stuff is like, okay, well, how does magic work? How does coercion work? How does this work? How does that work? What is the cost of a revolver in your world? There are so many things that get heaped upon us as game designers that we don't need to think about. What we need is we need to get the system working first. So when we were playtesting nautical campaigns, we already had the infrastructure. We had a D20. We knew we were using Dungeons and Dragons, but we were introducing a whole lot of new rules as well. And what was critically important in terms of feedback was having people play it. So if you're setting up a community, a forum, or however you're doing it, the most important thing is to set up spaces where people can present their rules and play them. There is a big difference between reading the rules and going, nah, they're boring, they don't work, and actually playing them. Huge, 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 huge difference. So I think that that is the most important thing that you can offer in terms of that. The other thing, of course, if you want to really help people, would be to give them a basic structure. And that structure is characters, rule systems, magic systems, gear and equipment and the like. So there we go. That's what I would look at. But yes, I think it's very, very, very exciting to start your own system. I have tried to collaborate with other people on their systems. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But you just have to roll with it and you have to go with it. And yeah, sometimes after designing for a couple of weeks, you go, it's not as efficient as I thought it was. And then you leave it and you move on to something else. And then you come back again, or you try a different way. So this year I created the system, the Try system, which was supposed to be more story focused and taking away from the complexity of how the game works. But what you lack, when you start lacking complexity, there's gray areas that start to form. So then you have to solve those. So yeah, that would be my suggestion, is definitely give people a space to play and test their systems in. And quite possibly what you could do, I was part of a LARP group where nobody wants to play the monsters, the NPCs. So what happened was, if you wanted to submit a work for people to review, you had to be on a role-playing group of at least 4 or 5 other people first, where they gave you, yes, you were on the panel, yes, you contributed, and then you could put your work up for review. So you've put in the time reviewing other people's work, now they can put in the time reviewing your work. Because people might not necessarily want to play other people's games, they're there to design their own. But when you are playing someone else's game, there is a huge amount of inspiration that you can draw from going, well, I played their game, it was terrible, but the idea that they had behind that was super cool and it's inspired me to do something else. So there we go. Those are my few 100,000 thoughts, Jarrett, on that idea. Landon says, what do you suggest when you finish setting a scene and allow the PCs to roleplay or act? However, they just sit there waiting for something to happen. Yeah, it does happen. And I think that my usual refrain is, you describe the scene, they sit there, and then you say, what do you do? If they say, we just wait, then you have a decision to make as the GM. Is something going to trigger if they just wait? If they just wait and nothing would actually normally trigger, then, well, they wait. And time passes, the moon rises, birds sing, animals feast and feed amongst the shadows. Night falls, nothing has yet happened. What do you do? If they continue to wait, then eventually you say, listen folks, I'm calling a timeout here. This is not how role-playing works. You make the decisions, I give you the repercussions of those decisions. That's how it works. I'm not going to tell you what to do next. If you don't know what to do next, then ask me, and we will go through a proper tutorial on how to roleplay, because some people just don't know that. AK Writer has a very good suggestion saying, what are you waiting for? Then they might be able to answer. I do, though, suspect that it's that they don't know what to do next. So there we go on that one. Alex says, can you do a review of 2nd edition Dungeons and Dragons? I loved Dungeons and Dragons 2nd edition when it came out. And when 3 came out, I was one of those people going, I don't understand. What could be done better? I like my weapon proficiencies and non-weapon proficiencies, and my kits, and class specializations, and all the handbooks. I had all of those handbooks. Those were the first D&D books I bought. Was the Druid's handbook, the brown books with the gold lettering on them. And those are the books that I was saddest to let go when I left South Africa. Was all of my 2nd edition Dungeons and Dragons books. That game, that version actually nearly ended several friendships because a friend of mine bought the Monsters Manual and I wanted a copy of it. Now, bearing in mind, South Africa, there was one store that occasionally bought in that kind of stock. And it was in the major city that was about 150 kilometers away from where we lived. And so it was rare to get there because it was right in the center of that city. And South African cities, you don't want to go into the center of. You really don't want to go into the center of it. And in those days, it was a little bit better, but you still didn't want to linger for any period of time. It was just too dangerous. So we decided we were going to photocopy the book. And the friend did not want us to photocopy it because he thought we were going to break the spine. We did anyway, and he found out, and he was very angry, and rightly so. We'd betrayed his trust. But doing a review on it, I'm not sure that it would be of, not of value. I mean, it's always of value, but the books are so scarce that it's only the older collectors who still have them, I would think. And if they're going to play the game, they're going to entice people themselves. Waveform says, my level 5 group is about to go against the villain to wrap up a chapter. Is that too low a level to play with level appropriate layer actions? Level 5 group, level appropriate layer? No, absolutely not. Why not? The whole idea of layer actions and legendary actions and all that sort of thing. Nah, I think that layer actions are fun, and why shouldn't we include them? So if you're going to balance it out to level 5, go for it. It's your game. Your game. You have the power. Seize that power. Run the game how you want to run the game. GM Brightside says, could you do a video or series on designing a game system from scratch? I could. I don't know if I'm an authority on that, though. I mean, I've written lots of game systems that have never worked. Or at least they did work, and they were curiosities, and they were fun. To date, as far as I'm concerned, the most successful one that I have done is the Nautical Campaigns book, The Combat, which wasn't a system. It was just a piece of a system. Before then, I did a vampire conversion for D20 Modern, and that was a lot of fun. People had a lot of fun with that. There were rules mechanics that were there. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I can certainly do it. I just don't think that I'm necessarily the one who would be an authority on that. I can give you my thoughts on that. But I will tell you this straight away. When it comes to the mathematical side of it, I am not one of those game designers that goes that statistically, if you're using this die combination or that die combination, you're going to get more of these or less of those, and so therefore you shouldn't use this or that. I write rules the way that I think they should work, not the way that mathematically they present themselves. So I usually get people in to help on that. Well, maybe there is something in that. Grizzle says, the DM whom I'm trying to help set up a game has this thing where something is sacrificed at level 15 for some sort of benefit. What do you think of this practice? If it's in the DM's game and they've told you about it when you signed up in session 0, then that's what you signed up for in session 0. And I think that, if they've got something, that's how they want it to work, then that's how they want it to work. Level 15 is very, very high, and if the sacrifice is some sort of deification or demigod status, well, then that's what it is. Paul R says, where should the simulationistic aspect of role-playing games rules stop and abstraction begin? Wow. As far as I'm concerned, it stops when the story gets... it stops when the story starts to be affected. Now, remember, the story is the player's story, and it's the GM's plot. So when the simulationistic aspect starts to get in the way, and the players are doing something super cool, and you go, well, that just wouldn't work. It really wouldn't work in real life. The physics wouldn't work. Man, maybe there's a suspension if you've set it up before, or if it's such a cool thing like any action movie. If you watch action movies from, say, the 90s and earlier, when stunts had to be done by real human beings. There was a limitation to what we would believe on screen. Nowadays, you watch an action movie, and even if it's supposedly set in the real world, people will still fly through the air and bounce against a wall and get up and be absolutely fine. That doesn't happen. It just does not happen. So I think with a little bit of GM power, you can do that. But I always say, if it's getting in the way of the story, if the story is cool and that's getting in the way, simulation stops straight away. Real Hard Chestnut 123 says, when making a continent, do you wait for the world to be completed, then get players in, or do you build as the players are carrying the story along? I usually have my continents in place just so that I know where the villains are and the heroes are and that sort of thing. The actual details of that continent can be filled in as the players go along, or adjusted or added to. Nicholas Phillipson says, would you be interested in being a DM for Jordan with a PH, XP to level 3, Dungeon Dudes and Shadiversity? Having played with XP to level 3 numerous times and absolutely and utterly loving it, I haven't met the other three, although with Shadiversity, one of us would have to wear a name badge saying I am not Shade, from what I understand. Oh, it would be an absolute blast, wouldn't it? I don't see why not. Go ahead, set it up if you can. It's an interesting question. Jimmy James says, I still have my second-hand books. Want me to send them to you? Oh, I loved all those books. You know, I don't know, it was just something about... It must have been the artwork. Because those books, if I am honest, I think contain the most beautiful artwork that Dungeons & Dragons has ever had. The modern-day books, it's all very dramatic and fantastical stuff. But the art execution is not at the same level that were in those original books. Those original books, you could see they were good old-fashioned oil paint on canvas type of stuff that really, really, really worked. Some of them were awful, and you kind of looked at them and went, it looks like a Mills and Boon romance novel cover, but okay, that's a paladin. So there you are. Dekrishka says... someone earlier forgot to put question before the question. If you ever played Vampire the Masquerade, I haven't played modern day versions of it. I've only played it once long ago, and don't particularly remember that session, to be perfectly honest with you. William Parker, I see that you did ask a question. You didn't put the word question in front of it, but I've seen it, so I will answer it. Have you considered a review of Star Trek Adventure Systems by Mobius? I did the alpha playthrough with the Mobius rule sets using some of my plays. You can actually find that on this channel. That was when it was still in very early stages. They released a few copies to the public to test out and give feedback on. We tested it out. I think that I didn't like it when it first came out because it used a player pool of player tokens and things. And when I first reviewed it, I was a diehard, absolute diehard of a D&D player where I wanted minimalist intrusion. And if you watch my channel, you'll see that. I wanted minimalist intrusion into that whole space. I just wanted it to be role-playing. It was just the die. And even if we could eliminate the die, it would be better. So I was very biased when it came out. I haven't looked at the final versions. I do know that they're available at the moment on Humble Bundle. I don't know what the price tag is on Humble Bundle. And I've got two other Star Trek systems. There's the Coda one, and then there's the one by Unicorn Games, which came out just before the Coda one. And those were good. Well, the Coda one was. I haven't read the Unicorn one yet. I would want to go back. I will be reaching out to them, by the way, once I'm done with Dark Eye, to talk about Star Trek Adventures. Jimmy James, I mean, that box is going to be huge, just by the way, in terms of, I realized I didn't answer your actual question. You would have to, well, I don't know how many you have. But if you sent them to me, then I'd do a review, right? But don't send them to me. Keep your books. Keep them safe. Keep them precious. The heat is coming back. Next question. Kabhala Games says, what are some good ways to give a small power boost to a monster that wouldn't justify bumping it to the next CR? I ignore CR, so I don't care. I just make the monster interesting, exciting, and challenging for the players to fight against. That's how I do it. I really do. If you want to sit with the AR and you really, really want to do it that way, the CR, not the AR, the CR, make it more intelligent in terms of how it operates, because that actually doesn't affect the CR. That really doesn't affect the CR. Give it tactics. That not as in pack tactics or horde tactics, or it gains a +5 bonus when. Give it actual tactics. It will lure the PCs into an alleyway so that they're all in single file, so that it can, that sort of thing will make them a lot tougher, and it has nothing to do with CR whatsoever. Warren Taylor says, and by the way, folks, we're now going on an hour. I will start reviews again when I return next. There is no show next Saturday because I am moving apartments. Yay! I am moving apartments. I love moving days. They really are an opportunity to reassess, re-examine, and to lay out, and so I'm really looking forward to that. So there's no show next Saturday, but the Saturday after I will go back to doing reviews and things. After today's fiasco, I'm just not in the right headspace. So I'm going to finish off these questions. And then we're going to call it for tonight. Right, so Warren Taylor says, have you heard of the Hyperlanes rulebook? It's an expansion of D&D 5th edition for the futuristic settings. If you have heard of it, what are your thoughts? I haven't heard of Hyperlanes. I have heard of... not Espergenesis. Is it Espergenesis? I think it's Espergenesis, which was a sci-fi version of 5th edition. I've seen the Star Wars 5th edition conversion, which was made by the Star Wars fans. So I don't have any thoughts on it. Look, originally TSR did a sci-fi setting called... help me out, those of you that remember it. Began with an A. Was it an A? Help me out. The sci-fi version that TSR released was then recreated as D20 Modern with the future setting. Not Ascendancy. Was it Ascendancy? Could have been Ascendancy. Anyway, so I've had a look at those, and I think that's Alternity. 10,000 experience points to Dragon. You go to level 10 straight away. Alternity. There you are. So yes, it is an interesting kind of system. Now the question of Hyperlanes and D20 Future, or D20 sort of sci-fi kind of game, I don't see why not. I really don't see why not. The basic D&D concept of a D20 with skills to overcome obstacles is absolutely sound. It's really robust. And if you add into it things like the rules that Nautical Campaigns added, which was for ship management, then I don't see why you would have a problem. That actually reminds me. Let me just double check on something. I might actually have a reveal for you today. One of the other day, I got a question about the Nautical Campaigns shipbuilding calculations. And I went, oh, they're asking me a question about maths. Why? Nonetheless, I reached out to the Discord group and I said, hey, I need help doing an Excel document to do the calculations and stuff. I really need this, and do I have any volunteers? I had so many volunteers. It was amazing. There must have been about 25 people who went, oh, I can help you with, vast amounts of Excel stuff. Nonetheless, one of them, the first person to reach out, was a gentleman by the name of Gene Armstrong. And Gene has been working like a trooper over the last couple weeks, just working on this Excel spreadsheet document. I'm going to share it with you. I haven't cleared it with him. I just grabbed his email now very, very quickly, but it is such a cool, sexy document that he has put together. So here you go. This is Gene Armstrong's work. And it's just brilliant. So you go, okay, well, my ship is, its length is actually, let's say it's 120 feet long. And it calculates how many weapons it can have. You can calculate your tonnage. I wanted to be able to haul this many tons, etc., etc., etc. So it's really coming up absolute trumps in terms of how it's all working, and it does all the calculations for you, and you can add in secret compartments and all the extras. You need a guard's barracks. Yeah, let's put in some barracks. Let's put in, say, 4 mangonels and 4 trebuchet, 4 ballista and 2 mangonels, and it's all just calculating it for you so that you know. And it's like, oh, this is how much food and drink we need. This is this is that. This is our monthly costs, our sailor wages, our X, Y, and Z. It's doing everything for you. It really is. Let's see. Hang on. Hit points. We only have 50 hit points. No, that's no good. This ship's going to have 400 hit points. It's a warship. And let's say it's going to have a damage reduction of 10. Yeah, that price is going up and up and up and up and up. And how wide is it? Let's say it's 25 foot wide. So it's this big beast of a monster. There's our price coming in. So Gene has done an amazing job on this. I see that he has given me a lot of information here. It can't be constructed in a small port, for example. Isn't that nice? It's going to take 9 weeks to build. It really is everything. Now, Excel is something that I just don't get. I really don't get it. So he's been working on that. That's really, really, really cool. So what was the point about that is, well, yes, if you're doing something that's science fiction, you need to have starships. You need to have starships. And that is definitely, definitely, definitely something that you would need to include. Anyway. All right, so that's where we are. I think I've got to the end of that. Definitely does not, okay, that guy definitely does not make it look more sexy than I could have done. Just the looks, not the maths behind it. So there we go. Sheena Tiger was one of the ones who volunteered, absolutely. When I say sexy, it means I didn't have to do anything. I just had to answer his questions and go, well, actually, the maths doesn't work so well. Or this doesn't work so well. But yes, the layout is functional. It does exactly what it needs to do. So there we are. There we are. Okay, well, that's it for me for tonight from a damp studio that is currently getting much more humid, I think, as the heat just sort of boils up in this space. I hope you've had a fantastic Saturday wherever you are in the world and whatever you have been doing. I hope that if you've got a game coming up this evening or tomorrow, perhaps, that you have the most amount of fun as humanly possible. And until, let me see, when is the next one? Okay, so next week, Wednesday, is the one-on-one with Raj. That's me running a one-on-one Dungeons & Dragons campaign where I do a Q&A afterwards, where we talk about the campaign, the adventure afterwards. So it runs for an hour and a half, and then I do half an hour where we talk about what I had planned to do in that 1.5 hour session. So that's on Wednesday at 6 p.m. GMT, and then you won't see me again until the following week, Wednesday, provided that I have internet. If I go quiet for a while from the 15th until about the 20th, that's when I'm waiting for the internet to get turned on and connected. But they have assured me, because let me tell you, if it's one thing that a YouTuber demands, it is internet. There's so many places I could have rented for less price, but their internet was too slow. I'm like, oh, that's nice, but I can't live there. I have demands. I have demands. Damn you, I have demands. Anyway, until next time, I wish you and yours the very happiest of gaming.